I have to cast my mind back to around about the mid-1990s, and I was riding my bike down Edgar Street here, and I saw a group of people underneath that mango tree, and me and a mate were cycling, and we went, what are those guys doing? Went over and had a chat. It was back in the days before smartphones and internet, and when you just walked up to people and said, hey, what are you doing? And they said, oh, we're starting off a community garden. And we said, what's that? What's a community garden? And they explained it, and I sort of resonated with the idea of it, like people coming together to grow food in the city. And I guess, I've got a family history around farming and agriculture, going way back in time. My family growing up in Perth, we weren't farmers, but we were connected to farmers. We grew up in suburban Perth.
That was your milieu, that was your culture.
Yeah, we used to go on family holidays on uncles' farms, and extended family and friends. And I guess I had this sort of interest in that, or a desire to grow food and just be a bit more connected with my place in the city. So I sort of got involved in community gardening, and it sort of helped with that, and the act of gardening, connecting people to place. And then I became really fascinated with plants and what have you, and I'd been doing stuff with Greening Australia, the organisation that's involved in rehabilitating the Australian landscape with plants. So I had an interest in plants, and I just wanted to do more stuff with plants.
And where was your job with the council coming in? Where was the horticulture training? Where did that fit in?
Yeah, so my work with the council came later. In the 2000s. I went back to train as a landscape architect. Really, because there wasn't a lot of work, and there still isn't really in permaculture, and so I needed to get a job. So what was something that would sustain me, a job in an area that I was passionate about, and that seemed to be landscape architecture. So I worked in that for 15 years with the council in a paid job. I guess there's a few things. When I was in Seattle, I was at Beacon Food Forest in Seattle a couple of years ago, and I talked to the president there, Will Rack, and he came up with a really great sort of catch cry for Beacon Food Forest, but I think it could apply to a lot of community food projects, and that is we came for the plants, but we stayed for the people. And I think for me that was sort of one of the motivations, was just being connected with people in the Brisbane community who are interested in this stuff. So there's that, and I've had a long interest, starting from the mid-1990s in permaculture design, landscape design and architectural building design. I'm a trained engineer and landscape architect, and so Northey Street's been great for me in terms of being able to apply some of these ideas in the real world. It has its challenges, particularly working in community. But yeah, so that's one of the things, and just seeing the evolution and change in this place, having more of a connection to it over the years, and just noticing how plants grow and change and evolve, and how the ecosystem here is improving on our 2.5 hectares of land, and just seeing the power of humans to make positive change.
It's kind of like a living laboratory here, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
You can actually see trees that you would never see anywhere else, all in one place.
Yeah, and like what happens, it is like an experiment. Like, what happens when you put a whole lot of people in a place and we just get into growing stuff in an urban environment? on a creek that floods on a contaminated land site, and despite all those constraints, we're doing really amazing things. So, I'm constantly fascinated and intrigued by that sort of thing.
And is there any little anecdote you can think of, or an experience that you had at Northey Street that kind of is very Northey Streetish to you? Like something
Yeah. Well, I think I was just trying to think of this before, and one of the things that's bubbled up in my mind, and I have lots of memories, good, bad, and ugly, about Northey Street. But
get more than one person together, you're going to have issues.
Yeah, that's right. But one of the lovely memories, going way back, of sort of like the first winter solstices that we had here, where it was potluck dinners and people just came along and contributed and shared. It's going to be a bit like the upcoming summer harvest. I think it'll be a little bit the same, have that same feel and vibe. It's just people freely sharing and giving their time and creating an event, and it's just nice to be in, and amazing what we don't need to do to create a good time together.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have to buy heaps of junk, for instance. Yeah.
Well, we don't buy heaps of drugs. We don't have to market it. We don't need to have a big campaign. We can just get the word out, and people will come together. And if we have the enticement of a fire, people are attracted to fire. That's one thing I've learned over the years, that people who live in cities don't really get exposed to the 5 elements that much, and fire is like a really powerful one. So having a bonfire in winter is really good. So that's one of my memories of those early days of winter solstices, and they're still great, but they're very different now. But the grassroots coming together of people, just no expectations, but really magic things sort of happening. And yeah. Great.